Welcome everybody to Badlands 3 and Badlands 3 Eudaimonia. Um, just some points of introduction on behalf of Peter Kavalek and the Cybernetics Society. We very much would like to welcome both Giles, who has a halo this evening, and Katie, um, who always wears a halo, I'm told, as both practitioners and theorists, and very much looking forward to those insights. In terms of Badlands, cybernetic considerations can be complex, particularly as people and institutions try to deal with dark variety. In Badlands 1, we explored security cybernetics, the idea of recursive games, increasing military complexity, games for cybersecurity, and the drugs culture and purchasing drugs on the dark web. In Badlands 2, our journey took us to ethics and privacy, um, the commodities of freedom in a data-driven society. And in Badlands 3, we explore eudaimonia.
Certainly, and thank you very much for welcoming me to the talk tonight. And Giles, thank you for a very interesting and enlightening presentation. I shall get my slides up. Okay, can everybody see my slides? Okay. Yep, getting some thumbs up.
Yes,
Lovely.
thank you. Yeah.
Well, yes. So tonight, my invitation is to talk about eudaimonia and what it might mean from an individual perspective and as an individual as a system. And so I will attempt to explore that through the metaphor I have picked for the name of my company. So my company is called Yellowrattle Coaching. A little bit about me, so you can see where my experiences come from. My first career was in the Air Force, and I did 3 tours in Afghanistan. I deployed with the Royal Marines on one of those tours, which fundamentally changed the way I thought about life, what it meant to live, and frankly, what it meant to possibly die. And I think that is something that is quite, and I will build on this in my talk as to what it means, because later I trained in psychoanalysis. So the role that our unconscious plays in our everyday decision making that we are not really aware of, but we can become more aware of. So with those skills, I work in innovation spaces. I work with people who are scaling their companies anywhere that are places that are liminal, spaces in between. So we're trying to move from one place to a new reality that we don't yet know what it looks like. And I may, in the conversations afterwards, I can touch on my MBA research as well. So I looked at what AI might be doing to our unconscious in the workplace and how we might create places that remain ones where humans can develop and flourish. So after COVID, the complexities and unseen currents shaping team and individual dynamics came into sharper focus. Signals beneath the surface of an organizational system, if you like, waiting to be decoded. That was a strong sense I got. And that's why I looked at doing these 2 research streams. So these were done at the same time. So I studied psychoanalysis and an MBA at the same time. And that's with the aim that I wanted to equip myself to better sense, better interpret and influence the deep systemic patterns at play in business contexts. So my name is after Yellowrattle, a natural ecosystem engineer. So for those of you, you may be aware of the plant. It's not well loved necessarily by certain people because it subtly alters its environment It creates space for wildflowers to thrive by calibrating competition and promoting diversity. And that's what I aim to do with my coaching and facilitation. Unsettle dominating patterns, open spaces for teams and individuals to flourish, and for new possibilities to emerge. So cultivating those feedback loops, requisite variety and adaptive capacity that help organizations steer towards resilience and renewal. So today I'm going to cover these sort of 5 points. So I'll start a little bit about what I understand eudaimonia to mean, and then the metaphor, a little bit more into the metaphor, and the links to cybernetics, and then into examples, sort of blending my military career and psychoanalytic concepts as to why these can be helpful for us in the present day. So, human excellence, Aristotelian flourishing then. So eudaimonia isn't a state that you achieve, it is a practice, or a praxis, as the Greeks called it. And it is not enough just to know it. So it's you must enact it, you must embody it, you must be living it as well. And so you really have to be living and breathing it. And the example I give here is, you may know what justice is, but not do it. And so the knowledge is not enough. And also, it is something that people say about you as well. It is not something you bestow on yourself. And traditionally, as I read more into this, it is said after you're dead. So it is, and nothing incomplete is happy, as it does not form a whole. So it's something that we move towards in our life. And it is something that is whole system. Your life, your relationships, your community, all of them together produce this. So we're alluding to one of the questions, the psychosocial aspects from the last presentation. It is all of these things that produce the result. It requires a complete life to assess. It's inherently systematic, and it is not individual, which leads to the self as system concept. So what does it need? External conditions. So you do need a certain amount of health, wealth, and fortune to flourish. So you do need the conditions to be able to create this. And it isn't about just pushing through regardless of what you have. You do need conditions to make it happen. And it is, as I say before, it is about actually practicing it, embodying it, and letting it shape your choices. And a social context. So none of this happens in isolation, and it is woven into other people and the systems you're part of as well. Which leads me on to the metaphor then. So it is a semi-parasitic plant that attaches to grass roots. But it doesn't destroy them. It weakens dominant grasses, but just enough to reduce their competitive advantage. And it creates gaps and openings where other species can establish themselves. And the result is you have a dramatically increased biodiversity in meadows. So it is known as the meadow maker. And it is built on, if we think of it in terms of organizational systems, it's built on the keystone species principle. So it, like other species, it has a disproportionate effect on the system diversity. And it is not about the size of the intervention, but its strategic placement in the system. Organizations often have dominant grasses as such, entrenched patterns, powerful voices, rigid processes that crowd out the diversity of thought and approach. So I sort of say you need a sprinkling of Yellowrattle. And the reason for this is because the work does not require these massive restructuring. You can have these disproportionate effects by these small changes. But they need to be strategic, they need to be targeted, and they need to create psychological space. You're not adding something, you're removing constraints that prevent the natural diversity from emerging. So we come with the positive regard into the system. We believe the system is good. It needs space. It needs space to flourish, and it needs the ability to remove the constraints. And so this aligns with one of the military principles called mission command, which is where you create space for decentralized initiative. So Yellowrattle, building on this is just to say the most powerful organizational interventions are often the smallest. Just enough parasitic pressure to create space for the diversity to flourish, and then system intervention and feedback loops. Okay, building into this sort of reality, what does this look like? What do people actually ask me to do? This is the kind of thing. So when I use the metaphor to explain how I'm working with people, when we're looking at the soil, if you like, these bullet points here help to create the right environment. And so I can do different pieces of work with people on these aspects here. And then the roots of the flower are really about who you are as an individual. So I accept who I am. I know how I contribute, and I live in the present. And then what that helps us do with the right soil and the right roots, we can meet whatever weather comes. So that's the idea behind it. So bringing this together and we having a look at it is how do leaders create the conditions for collective eudaimonia without controlling the outcomes? So the second part of this presentation is my reflections and integration of this question. And I'll show you this through military experience and the lens of psychoanalysis. And so we'll see a systems approach through these two lenses. So in the military, there is rigid centralized command structures that can act like dominant grasses, and they crowd out local initiative and contextual adaptation. Now, if I give an example of where I served in the Air Force, they recognized the danger of this in aviation and introduced something called an accountable culture. And this created the conditions for accountability and continual improvement. So people recognized that they could say they had made an error and not fear the consequences were worse than owning up to it. And so this again was an example of this. And across the other services, as mentioned previously, was the idea of mission command. So weakening the centralized control just enough to allow subordinate leaders to exercise disciplined initiative. An important aspect of this is that shared understanding of the command, what we call commander's intent. And that's the organizing principle, not orders. And so do we understand the commander's intent? And that's a really important aspect of it. And there can be first order intent and second order intent. And as long as everybody throughout the organization understands first and second, they can then be given the ability to act on their own initiative. And what you have is organizational resilience and adaptive capacity for complex environments. So bringing now into a psychoanalytic, and I will move between military and psychoanalytic in this, bringing a psychoanalytic concept in. Wilfred Bion is a brilliant theorist around this concept of containment. And what this is, it's the concept, it's the capacity to hold and process troubling emotions without being overwhelmed by them. So if you think back to the previous presentation, it can be an overwhelming challenge to address such an important challenge. And so in terms of what organizations need, institutions need, they need a containing ability for the organization itself to process the difficulty, the emotions that are held by the organization over the actual topic they're trying to address. And this fundamentally is what is the mother or primary carer's role to a baby. They contain what it is to be human for a child, for a baby. So as the baby enters the world, the most overwhelming thing for them is to realize just what it is to be alive. And so the mother or primary carer's role is to contain that experience and help them digest what it is to be human. And so it is for leaders too. That's their role as well. So they must contain anxiety, uncertainty, tension during this, whilst allowing the system to work it through. So not to take it away, not to say it doesn't exist. Work it through with them whilst containing all of those emotions. But it's critical because it provides a space for the anxiety of the group to be held. And that is what stops the transition from an old way of being to a new way of being, is that there is no place for the anxiety to go. And when there has nowhere to go, it spills over into destructive patterns, resistance, scapegoating, regression. So my role as Yellowrattle, bringing the military, bringing the psychoanalytic lens together, is I create that containment. So I create just enough, I take just enough of the system's anxiety to prevent it from being overwhelmed. And I leave space for the organisation to develop its own capacity to process the difficulty. So I'm not providing solutions. I'm providing the ability to hold it for a bit, to listen, to replay, to understand, and to say what's not being said. So a little bit more about this holding environment, and again, it's Winnicott. It's important to mention that this idea of a holding environment just needs to be good enough. And good enough means you make mistakes. You mishear. You don't quite understand. But you have the ability to say, I got that wrong. And it's okay. And that's what the holding environment does. You may have seen it with innovation as well, is a military officer said to one of the innovation environments, yes, but how many times did you fail? Oh, hardly any. Well, then you aren't testing the right things. That's a containing environment. That's the environment that says we're trying, and if we fail, that is fine, but we learn from it. And that's it. It's not perfect. It's not controlling. It's just sufficient for risk-taking and growth. And all organizations need it. They need spaces, which are called transitional spaces, where we can test this without the fear of catastrophic failure. And during strategic change, holding environments allow individuals to tolerate ambiguity and to develop themselves. And again, for my role as Yellowrattle in this, the plant doesn't provide nutrients, but just creates the conditions for others to thrive. Holding environments, they don't give answers. They create the space for discovery. Something I wanted to mention here about this is a very confusing space as well. It can be very difficult. Whose emotion is whose here? And this is called transference and organizational dynamics. So unconscious patterns start to emerge from past relationships, from previous organizations people worked in, from myths and stories about institutions. They come into the relationships in the organizations. And the leaders can become repositories for this. And then they are asked to save them. When the new boss comes, this will all change. When the new financial year comes, it'll all be different. These are all projections around what the organization is saying rather than facing what the actual challenges are. But typical things that can be projected onto leaders are the role of savior, persecutor, and abandoner. But understanding this helps leaders not to personalize this. they can start to see that it is just something that is being projected onto them. And it's very important for leaders to be able to do that self-work on themselves, because although some of it might be hard, some of it might be projecting onto them as the savior, the one who's going to make everything better. But if they get caught up in that story, they won't see what's really happening. And the countertransference is the way you respond to these projections. And what you might be feeling or thinking is really good diagnostic information about how the system is responding to the change. You may be holding what the system is actually projecting onto you. So, military example. And this is what I said in the start about this idea of life or death. It's a really sort of in-between space, a very liminal space between life and death. It is the ultimate liminal space. And so in that space, there is some extraordinary situations that military leaders can find themselves in, and the unconscious dynamics that they feel. And I want to bring in a very eminent existential psychiatrist called Irvin Yalom, and he talks about four existential concerns for humans. We all have these within us. Death is the first. The loss of freedom. And so when we think about what safety things we might be wanting to bring into society, the other side of it is the loss of freedom. And so we need to understand, if we turn one part of the system up, what happens to the other part of the system. Isolation. And this is a really important aspect around the role of AI, as AI encourages isolation. Meaninglessness. What is the point of what I am doing? And this is a relational experience. But something very interesting is his belief, Irving Yalom's belief, is that when people accept mortality, they are free to live. And they can live authentically, with vitality and with gratitude. And understanding this helps military leaders create psychological safety rather than compliance. So how do we make sense of all of this then? I'm going to introduce you to the guide that has helped me in this. And this is an eminent psychologist by the name of Carl Jung. And I think Carl Jung is going to be, I hope, very interesting to you as the way that he understands the systems. So a little bit about him, a Swiss man who died in 1961. But he created his own style of depth psychology. And he created these innovative methods for working with symptoms, with dreams, with fantasies, with visions, and even works of art on the level of psychological symbolism. And in that is his way of doing systems thinking. Four main archetypes, which he understands, is how we function as humans. The persona, about what we show the world. The shadow, what the conscious experiences as negative. The anima and animus, the balance within us. And the self, which is the whole of the psyche and the future potential. The psyche includes all three layers of the unconscious as well. They're innate, universal, unlearned, and hereditary, and they organize how we experience things. And they are the result of collective, shared ancestral memories that may persist in art, literature, religion, but aren't obvious to the eye. And this is what he said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And who looks outside dreams and who looks inside awakens. So how did I find him? Very briefly, this is me as an engineer, working very much in process and in systems as an engineer. But I found it hard. I found that there was something missing. And this is what I wonder about our systems today. Are we too binary in the way that we're thinking about things? So going back to university, I learned more about diplomatic relations and how the world functioned. And I had a thought about consulting and innovation. The names I write up there are people who think systematically in the way that Carl Jung did, and I highly recommend their reading to you. And these are the type of things that they write about. My training as a psychoanalyst was with the Jungian Association, and then my work with Warwick Business School helped me form the company that I did. But this is what it taught me. This is the importance of living with paradox. To achieve control, you must relinquish it. To create unity of effort, you must distribute authority. And so this is why I think this work is really relevant to us and to systems thinking. He showed us, for example, it can mean different things for different people. And this is the importance of the individual's experience. And that actually we might not be able to find words for things, but we can find ways to describe things that with others we can help interpret. And actually we see the similar things in physics, systems theory, reflections on the climate crisis, as well as group dynamics and the conflict within oneself as well. So to be able to understand your role in system, you need to understand yourself first. So these are some core philosophical foundations about unconscious forces. It's about the gut feel that you have. They're not random, they are shaped by unconscious decisions and patterns. It's all about what's lying underneath as well. When we think about traditional thinking, we might think, how do we fix this? But actually, we might wonder, what might this represent? What pattern is being enacted? And we need to integrate all of this. We need to integrate the emotional, relational, systemic perspectives. We are not isolated decision makers. We are embedded in relationships and systems that profoundly shape us. And what unconscious fear might success represent? What early relationship pattern is being repeated here? When we think about the resistance to doing something, what might success represent? What fear does success hold? So a bit of different ways of thinking on this slide. So this is the idea. Traditional thinking, what needs to change? Psychodynamic. Why do these patterns keep occurring? So bringing this together, something. So this is the idea. As a leader in practice, we need a bit of strategic parasitism. Identify the dominant grasses in your client organization. What patterns, voices, structures are crowding out diversity? Apply just enough pressure to weaken the whole, not destroy them. Create space. And use paradoxical interventions. Sometimes the way to strengthen is to weaken, and the way to control is to release. Create holding environments. Establish psychological containment for anxiety and uncertainty. Provide structure that is good enough. And allow transitional spaces where experimentation is safe. Balance the support and challenge. Too much comfort prevents growth, too little creates trauma. Field theory, again, building on the analogy as well. Change doesn't happen in individuals, but in a field of forces. Assess the entire life space. What are all of the things that could be influencing this? And unfreeze the system by disrupting the status quo. Change through experience and refreeze new patterns. And your interventions shift the force field by reducing restraining forces, not just increasing driving forces. Working with the unconscious, stay attuned to those counter-transference and transference moments. Help them surface those defense mechanisms that block the change. And support the individuation of the organization. Find its voice, find its purpose. And create those conditions for collective psychological safety that allow the truths to emerge. And of course, the cybernetic feedback loop. Organizations are self-regulating. They resist change to maintain stability. So just do small disruptions and get those feedback loops that create those new patterns. And monitor the responses. the anxiety, the resistance, the emergence of new behaviours. Adjust the interventions based on what the system can metabolize. And the ethics of the sprinkle, there is responsibility that comes with this. Use them wisely. They can create disproportionate power. It doesn't choose who benefits. It just creates the space. And it's to create the conditions, not control the outcomes. And trust in the system's innate capacity for self-organization and flourishing. So my invitation to you. Cybernetics offers the conceptual tools to understand how small interventions create systemic change. Psychoanalysis provides insight into unconscious resistance and emotional dynamics. Military experience teaches practical wisdom about leadership and complexity. Together, they inform a practice of facilitative leadership that creates conditions for eudaimonia. Yellowrattle doesn't try to be the most beautiful flower in the meadow. It simply does characteristic work, and in doing so creates the conditions for an entire ecosystem to flourish. This is organizational eudaimonia, excellence in service of collective flourishing. I will stop sharing now.
Wow, Katie, just fantastic. I can see Giles's hand is already raised, and Margaret as well. So we've got lots of questions coming in, but do you want to just take a breather for a second?
Yeah, sure. I'll take a sip of water if you can coordinate. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Margaret, I can see your hand first on my left screen. So would you like to come in, please? As a biologist, of course.
Oh, so I think mute. Is somebody on mute?
Meg,
I think
you're on mute.
Beg your pardon, sorry. I'm
Yeah.
quite interested how you use your own bodily senses and feedbacks to
Absolutely.
feel the field, so to speak.
So this is absolutely fundamental to my approach. And this is where the work on self really began. And if I may share, it really was the thing that brought me into this way of thinking. My body has prevented me from doing many things. And when I was able to actually listen to what my body was trying to tell me, it completely transformed my ability to hold spaces, to think, to feel. You know, and when you walk into a room, you can feel what the room is like. And this is the invitation, is you can hold that and you can bring that into the space. But it's not my brain that gets it, it's my body. And this is what it is. And this is this affective neuropsychology. So this is the thing where you might confidently be telling me something, but I'm feeling something very different. And it's the ability to hold those contradictory information that is the power, And so, yes, it is fundamental and the guiding principle.
Wonderful, thank you. Giles, I did see a gesture from yourself at one point.
No, I was just giving an applause for Katie's talk.
Right.
That was a brilliantly crafted and brilliantly delivered and very thought-provoking presentation.
That's very kind, Giles. Thank you.
May I ask my question then?
Yeah, please jump in, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you. Most of the work that I've done in organizations at all levels has been, in your terms, I guess you could frame it as shadow boxing.
Okay.
And I'm kind of interested from a slightly different point of view, I think, having observed and listened to you and made massive attributions about the nature of the pathway that you've walked and the energy and time it's taken to find purpose and meaning in the life that you're living, and the use of your own body as a way of sensing, is this the right choice I'm making or not? Rather than ask you a clever question to demonstrate what a smart ass I am, I would much rather know what it is for yourself that you see as your next step to continue to evolve your capability.
Well, thank you. That's very kind to invite me with that question. So I'm writing a book at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm writing about the human in the loop. So in a world where AI is around us permanently, consciously and unconsciously, how do we create and maintain the uniquely human aspects in a world that will be dominated in the field by AI? And that's what I'm writing about.
It may interest you to know that I've just acquired an NVIDIA DGX Spark supercomputer to explore that very question. But to do it through the technology and what the guys in NVIDIA are actually envisaging, if I can put it that way, the role of the human to be. Because
yeah, and I think like this is so important. So this is the thing that's going to evolve and evolve and evolve. And one of the things that some of the OpenAI and other organizations that they're imagining how we might engage is essentially to decapitate us.
Well, the word you used earlier was to individuate the work process and to separate humans from each other.
And this is the danger.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the absolute danger, because not only is it about separating us from one another, it is also about what we would call in psychoanalysis splitting. So within our own self, we become separate, right?
I studied for a while with Susan Greenfield, who was the neuropharmacologist.
Amazing.
But yeah, so the other thing, I guess, from the AI point of view is, if you take a look at, as an engineer, I can say this to you, the difference between a scalar, a vector, a matrix, a tensor, time-based polynomial, array of multidimensional magnitudes, etc., leads to the formation of non-fungible tokens at the end, which contain different data sets. The way in which it's going from the point of view that I'm taking is to orchestrate those non-fungible tokens into coherent strategies which create agentic swarms outside the control or the observation or creativity of the human being. And it's a puzzle as to what this is going to lead us to. Do you have any idea about that?
Well, I would say that what I'm drawn to thinking about, as you were saying that, is the power of the observed to change what is being observed. So
the Copenhagen argument in quantum physics. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is so if I build on that a little bit, is as part of my training, I'm invited to observe a newborn baby from the week that they are born until they are 2, every week for 1 hour.
Is that Winnicott?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to trawl through my memory of these things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And this was a concept designed in the 50s, that for us to be able to understand the development of the personality and the individual, you would need to observe a child in this first stage every week for 1 hour. And so I will complete that study in 2 weeks' time.
Bless you. I'll just give you one very quick thing and then I'll stop, because I could go on for in this conversation, I think. Years ago, I ran sessions in Temple College, Oxford, on human development. And I had a babysitting problem with my daughter, who at that time, 15 months old. And they had a ban against children in the college. And the only way I could get her in there was as a training aid to human development.
There we are. There we are. That's it. That's the small adjustment.
Exactly. Oh, well, thank you so much anyway. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Yeah. You're very welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely lovely, Katie. So many different points of connection with my experiences. But just one question, perhaps looking at everyone here in these rectangles. I'm concerned quite deeply about this removal of the human connection in the biofield kind of sense that you're talking about. When you go into a room and you can actually feel the energy, which is now becoming scientifically proven that exists. that we all have these energy fields that, are either closed off or not complete, or have gaps and holes, or there's pain in different parts of the body which then block the energy flow. I mean, we could go on about, what happens in the lymph and the fascia systems about energy flows and the storing of psychological trauma, which we've all got. But I guess the question I've got, and I'm just interested about group dynamics and all of the holding of the tension, even like Richard's been doing today and in these Zoom calls, is how do we take account of this increasing use of Zoom in the human communication, and how do we hold that? How do we pick up the biofield? I mean, until we've got some way of projecting the energy, I mean, it's very hard. I mean, I've got some real pictures. I turn my camera off, I turn my camera on. Got names here. We've got some little symbols. Margaret's got her red light on. She's in red. Giles is in a misty, divine environment. Anyway, got any thoughts on how we sort of deal with this?
Yeah, there's for me, I do a lot of work online.
Yeah.
And it's fundamental to my ability to be able to relate to the group or the person I'm talking to, right? And what happens for us as well is, if I'm looking at all of you, I have no idea if you're looking at the little thing of yourself in the corner or if you're looking at me. I have no idea. And so my brain is often on high alert. I'm not sure who's looking at who's a threat. Is that side glance at me because I said something silly? And so the whole condition is set for us to be on high alert, right? And so when it is suboptimal, it is suboptimal. This is never going to replace human-to-human connection, but some things can.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we can do as a facilitator to hold the group, if you like, is, for example, I'm standing. Okay, because when I'm standing, and I'm standing on an earthing mat.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
And so it is my energy flow. It has somewhere to go.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I have a light that's just here that allows me to hopefully be seen clearly.
Right.
Okay. And I have a microphone, which is a very nice, very good microphone. So I hope I'm being heard clearly.
Right.
So there's a bunch of things that I can do, just small things contextually, that hopefully when I speak make the audience go, okay, I think you know what you're doing, or I think you know what you're talking about. And those small things will help project to the only two things, sight and sound.
Yeah.
That's it. But what I'm doing for me is making sure that I have all the other sensory requirements are met, so that what I'm projecting in, my needs are met, so I don't need to project any loss onto you.
Oh, okay, that's a nice thought. Thank you. Hopefully my touring setup of a laptop with none of that, which I've got at home, by the way, and a standing desk that goes up and down, which is always fun. But I think the earthing mat's really crucial as well. Anyway, thank you. Lovely.
I do, yeah.
Lots of other people might have questions.
Thanks, Peter. Meg, I can see Meg's hand up. I'm just going to very quickly go to the chat if I may beforehand. So self as a system, Katie. I've put some comments in. I think Beth is taking it a stage further. I don't know if Beth would like to come in, but I think the point is really interesting about what you have shared with us and some of the challenges that Giles has presented. Beth, is there anything else you'd like to add at all?
Yeah, I was really struck that we've got so you've got online both regular behaviours in the world that are supported by digital activity, but you've also got a new set of behaviours that are emerging. And so when you put up the point about the unconscious, I was wondering if there's anything going on in that online system, particularly in those new virtual behaviours that might in some ways mirror or be allegorical for our unconscious. And have you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting point. And it leads to what we were just talking about. So the things that make us know that we are alive is our sight, our sounds, our smells. That is what makes us know we are alive. We don't know what consciousness is. We have some good guesses, but we don't know what consciousness is. But the thing that makes us alive is this. In the virtual world, they do not exist. And so what happens is we enact ways that are actually from our unconscious. So we may attack someone. We may project things that we would not allow ourselves to do in the real world, because what consequences are there? It's imaginary. And there is no gut punch, there's no gut feel, there's no sudden thought, because you are in an imaginary world. And what we don't have is we don't have a transitional space out of that world. We take the headset off, we take the headphones out or whatever, and we immediately are into the real world. But you actually need a space to decompress. You need a space to transition out of that imaginary world and into the real world. And this may sound slightly abstract, but we had people who did this. We had shamans. We had in other cultures people who understood that if you are enacting in the unconscious, you need safe passage back to conscious.
Mm.
And if we don't have that, and we don't have that because we've dismissed all of this great millennial, over millennia's knowledge, we've dismissed it as storytelling and myths, but it's not. So that would be my my thoughts on the kind of why we see metaverse activity and why we see these awful things online, because it's not me. It's a version of me online.
That's a really interesting thought. It takes me into, I'll just say this and then stop. But it takes me into like our relationship with the sacred and the profane, and that the internet and that online imaginal liminal space has emerged at a time where we're maybe less competent in navigating the sacred and the profane. And it's taken a space that has elements of the sacred and taken it into a darker space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful points.
Margaret dropped her hand.
Go to Margaret next, I think.
Hi. Yeah, so there is quite a lot of interesting cognitive science work on this with folk, for example, who are blind or deaf, or how. And so one of the things we know with online stuff is it matters how much of your body and your hands. So, for example, if you were to just shift your camera down slightly so I could see more of your hands, this already allows me to perceive you differently.
Yes.
So the face should never be more than 25%. So my face is, back here is easier for you to see me, and I can use my hands and you see me as a person. Whereas this is actually extremely confrontational.
Yeah.
Then the other way we sense, we don't need to sense necessarily with our bodies, we hear tones of voices. And in fact, people are less able to lie over telephones than they are through text or video, which is very interesting. So there's all these kinds of weird cognitive things that happen with us when you restrain the senses in some direction or other.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think this is it is that specific aspect that you're describing that causes all of these systemic changes when people make decisions because they felt a particular way. And so if we don't create the conditions that allow us to hold the space that says, well, hey, hang on, there's a lot of tension here, or there's a lot of stuff that's just doesn't feel right. If we ignore that and push through to decisions, this is where we then have these challenges where things don't change and the resistance happens.
But also, if I'm looking at the space, I used to be a designer, look at the space you've set yourself in, right?
Yes.
There's a little variety in the background for me to just look at. There's some very simple geographic objects, lines, right? But I'm forced to focus on you, the person, that it's very still behind me, behind you. I'm putting myself in your body.
Yes, yes.
And it's very still and calm and peaceful. Everything is kind of really it's held It's not
Yes.
distracting. It's extremely sort of simple in the way that allows you to actually foreground, if you know what I mean, as a person. So it's the design of how you set this up is actually very clever. So
And this
that
here,
matter. Yeah.
if you can see, this is to invite
Yes,
the
exactly.
discussion.
I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly what that's there for.
It's a little mental loop for us to play with as we're listening.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, what is it actually?
It's fighting hares, boxing hares.
Okay. Oh. But you've interestingly, consciously or unconsciously, put your head in a frame.
Yes. So this is
behind you. I don't know what it is, but I mean, is that your unconscious behind you?
So the unconscious movement is me putting myself in the frame. You're absolutely right. That is an unconscious decision. Okay. There is a real reason why I have the two pictures. They're of the same thing, Mount Fuji, but they look entirely different because it's a change of season. Right. Now, I have a setting on Zoom because I'm presenting to you tonight, which means it's Zoom, sort of it's focused on me. But if I'm having a conversation with you, just a catch up or a session, it's all clear behind me. But this is the idea: is I can point to both of these pictures because they are exactly the same mountain, but they look completely different because the season has changed, and that's the idea: is that the context changes us.
Sure.
Okay, David, you've put some comments in. Is there a question formulating or forming from that? You're on mute, David. David, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I've got it. I was trying to multitask by turning off a phone at the same time. Yeah, I mean, really, what can I do but sort of cheer a bit? I mean, what I have said has already been said, but sometimes when people say that, you have the urge to say it again in your own words. And I think what has been said, I would like other people that I know to hear this. If some of what you're saying, Katie, strikes me as very similar to James Wilkes' minimalist intervention, and he's rather keen on psychoanalysis as well. I'm getting a little bit more subjective feel with what you're saying than what I had absorbed. So yeah, just appreciation and the whole thing about any formalism taken too simplistically tends to have the seeds of its own disruption in it. So yeah, you read the books on management by objectives and effective executive, and it's all kind of necessary first step stuff, but you shouldn't stay fixated there. The more you can take on board, the more you can adjust and so on. But you've already said that, but yeah, sometimes I need to say things again.
No, indeed, and this, David, is the digestion. This is the ability to say, let me say it back in my own words, because that's then how you remember it. So yeah, and absolutely, this is a holding space exactly for that, and that's exactly what a group should do. In my own words, can I play this back? So
well, thanks
very
for
well
appreciating that, because sometimes I get annoyed when people do it to me. I think I've already said that. So I'm doing the same thing. Cheers.
So I'm wondering, if I may, if your process in a way might be very helpful for police people. I'm thinking multi-level stuff, right? Is this way of actually working might actually help them to internally resolve all the contradictions that they're in and manifesting and creating, but actually also teaching them to get back into their bodies in a way, to be able to handle the variety that they're facing every day better. So maybe this liminal space work is exactly the sort of creative space that folk could deal with very dark stuff all the time, might safely enter into, to be able to actually generate the sorts of viable organization that would allow them to function effectively in society. I'm wondering if there isn't these perhaps process feedback loops that can be built in if the two of you start getting together and thinking about
yeah. Well, it's a really interesting idea, because institutions are absolutely prime for this type of work. So I wouldn't talk specifically about any particular institution tonight, but the reason that they are so prime for this is that they are, there's two types of containment that's required for successful. One is structural and one is emotional. And what happens with institutions is that they are structurally strong. So they're going to continue to exist. A bit like banks. They're going to continue to exist regardless of what's happening here. They might not exist in good form, but they will exist. And so if you were to take any institution and invite this type of conversation and invite this space, they can hold it structurally. The evidence at the moment would suggest that some organizations, some institutions would struggle emotionally. But whilst they have the structural containment, we can work with the emotional, because that bit's done. You're not going to be destroyed by this process. You will exist. And if we go back to those 4 existential fears, organizations have them too.
Yeah.
And so if they fear they will be destroyed by this process, they will not enter into it.
Yeah.
But institutions will survive, but how we want them to, and as you know, we have seen, we want organizations to develop, to change, to meet the needs of the 21st century. So perhaps if organizational and institutions were open to this, we might see something different.
It just, it reminds me, I mean, I have a sort of assertion that I make, which is that it's the neurophysiology that is the rate limiting factor for transformation and change. And it's, in a sense, looking at metabolic pathways. If your enzymes can only work at a certain rate, they can't transform something into something else. And so,
well, so there's a very interesting way to think about it as well, is when we think about our endocrine system and our nervous system. They're feedback loops, so they feed each other. Our nervous system is fed data from our physical health and our spiritual health. And our endocrine system is fed from our emotional and our mental, right? So if you only address one half, your feedback loop is corrupted. You have to look at all 4 to be able to regulate the systems. But often people will only look at 2 or 1 or 3 and not 4.
Thank you. Guys, we've been going for 2 hours. Doesn't time fly when we're having fun? Any final questions, please, for Katie? Wonderful. Sorry, is that Mike?
Sorry, I guess I have one. The thing that's bothering and vexing me is there is clearly, in terms of governance, with all the corruption, misogyny, and all the rest of it, and I've got 2 daughters that I love dearly, that I am keen to make sure they have a space to live their lives in, which is nourishing and they can flourish in against their own choices. So the thing that's vexing me at the moment is the degree to which, in your introductory paragraph that I read, you talked about the difference between emergence and determinism. And at the moment, it seems to me we have deterministics through the structures of institutions, deterministic processes, which in their own way, if you look at it from, because I did engineering and sociology and fintech and so on, is they are institutionalized violence. Their power derives from being able to say no, to sack you, to make you wrong, to destroy your reputation, to undermine you by etc., etc., etc. In the face of that, the need for the emergence of a more shamanistic, compassionate orientation into nudging or nurturing or investing or transforming the self as a way of inviting others to follow that pathway, to change themselves and invest in themselves, to go to the union point of an integrated, individualized wholeness, to handle the spiritual nature of being a human being. And I just wonder at the moment, as I listen to you, yes, I get it. And I think everybody that you've got listening to you at the moment gets it too. But what is the intervention? Because the intervention that I have followed is if I change myself, then I'm changing the system I'm participating in. So I can make small differences. But the immensity of the issues that we face in certain institutions is huge. How do we make the transference, the transformation between small changes the individual can make against the major changes, the ability of the institutions to handle the pathways of emotional containment and effective rationality and morality and justice?
Big question there, Mike. If I'm a little
because
reductive,
my head's so big.
yeah, if I'm a little reductive in my answer here, so I really am pulling this down. It is the role of the group and reciprocity. So it starts with family, it starts then with community, then with the organization you work in, then with society, then with societal challenges like climate change. And it is reciprocity that builds the idea that it is not value extraction, but value creation that we make together.
Now, on that particular point, the capitalist system that I live in seems to want to deepen the, shall we say, the difference between what somebody emptying the bins gets paid and what somebody senior in one of the major corporations gets paid. The inequality that is being fueled is quite extraordinary, leading to the fact that most families, in order to survive these days, cost of living and all the rest of it, have to have both parents out to work. The data suggests, and I have to say it's probably more at the level of an axiom, it hasn't been a tested hypothesis yet, by me at least, is that with both parents out, who takes care of that early 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 11 developmental needs? And I just wonder if a connection back to Giles is, in the absence of good mothering, in the absence of a mother acting as a role model for her male child to develop appropriate relationships with an adult female, whether there isn't some embedded and increasing anger towards women, which manifests in the violence that we experience in our society at the moment, and also feeds into the mental health crisis that seems to be affecting our adolescents.
So what I would say to that, Mike, is I could have first of all, I could have a whole evening's conversation on this. I absolutely could. But what I would say is, and this is forming part of my book, is we are going to have the humans we have. And leaders are going to have to be able to respond to them. And we need to be able to help leaders respond to them as they are and help them. So leadership is going to be a whole new frame. And this is the adaptive side.
It's a pragmatism that I don't see existing at the moment.
Because my book's not published yet, that's why.
Now that's a reply that would come after 2 pints of Guinness. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I continue to work with the question. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, right? Is as am I. Hold the question. Love the question. Keep reflecting on the question. That's exactly the way that I try and go about life, is just love the question.
Well,
anyway, I've really appreciated your input. Thank you. And thank you.
And thank you.
Take this last few moments. Cheers.
Thank you, Mike. That's a lovely way to perhaps draw the session to a close. We've lost Giles, who's rapidly going back to join his conference. For me, Katie, you've really added different perspective to, quite frankly, quite a bleak landscape that Giles painted, and offered. If I keep using this term, eudaimonic pathways, but a pathway of thinking and approaching leadership, organizations in a very human and humane way, and that was the gamble that we took with this session, and I'm so grateful for the way you've managed to create that dialogue. So huge thanks. I think it's been a fascinating approach, and obviously generated some great dialogue with the recording. It would be great that this isn't the end point, but perhaps a continuation opportunity for further conversations and engagement. I'm just getting the nods from people, and that's incredibly helpful. I don't think we've got time for an in the bar conversation. I'm going to look at Peter Tuddenham. What do you think, Peter? Sorry, Peter, you're on mute.
Sorry. Let's stop the recording. I think that's sort of the end of the formal session. And just add my deep thanks for all of this.